Good day, everyone, especially to our dear panelists. I am Reynard Andre O. Castro. Together with my group mates, we are here to present our research study entitled Cognitive Perception of Certified Public Accountants on the Proposed Amendments to Accountancy Act of 2004. To start our presentation, here is Beatriz Romero for the background of our study.
Good day, everyone. On March 26 last year, the BOA started its public hearing with regards to the proposed Accountancy Act of 2021. This amendment aims to develop and nurture world-class accountants who are competent, excellent, and productive into strengthening of the practice of accountancy in the Philippines to better adjust to more modern times. One of the controversial amendments is Section 7, which is which is Section 14 in RA 9298, requirements for a license as a certified public accountant. Line number 6 states that experience have at least 2 years of diversified experience in any field of practice in accountancy prior to the licensure examination in accordance with the regulations to be prescribed by the board. Becoming a CPA already requires much effort. This is why the demurs were raised claiming that the requirement mentioned earlier is untimely for the CPA examinees, even if the application of the revised rule is prospective and will apply to the future board takers. The new prerequisite will undoubtedly affect the expectation of those currently pursuing or planning to pursue an accounting program. Furthermore, aspiring CPAs will have to face another set of challenges. Despite the negative comments about the requirement, the regulatory board presented its reasons. It aims to meet the global standards of CPAs, improve the CPALI rating, and enhance the Philippine CPA brand. This is why this research focused on determining the perspective of CPAs about the proposed amendment of RA 9298, focusing on the at least 2 years work experience prior to the taking of the CPALE. The aim of this study was to gather the CPA's concerns and opinions so lawmakers can meet the expectations and demands of those engaged with the accounting profession. The next presenter will be Ms. Ronavic T. Ramos.
Good day. For the statement of the problem, in order to better understand the suggested revision, this study intends to compile vital facts. This research study focused on the cognitive perception of CPAs to the proposed amendment to the Accountancy Act of 2004, which is the 2 years of working experience as a requirement before taking the licensure exam. There hasn't been a lot of research regarding this amendment because it is still very new. In addition, the legislative body must compel the participation of individuals impacted by the proposed adjustments. The CPAs from various accounting fields provided their opinions based on their own experiences. They would speak specifically about the aim of this amendment, such as greater career prospect, higher scholar ratings, and increased competitiveness of Filipino CPAs compared to worldwide standards. Additionally, the CPAs comment on the CIPALIT style questionnaire as well as the examinee's stock knowledge after 2 to 3 years of employment. The researcher aimed to answer these two specific problems, which is first, what was the cognitive perception of certified public accountants on the proposed amendment to the Accountancy Act of 2004 in relation to stock knowledge of the examinees, competitiveness of Filipino CPAs versus global standards, employment opportunities, CIPALI type of questionnaire, and CIPALI rating. Second is, what was the respondent's stance on the proposed amendment to the Accountancy Act of 2004? The next presenter is Mr. John Dale Agkawili.
For the theoretical framework of this study is anchored by the theory of top-down theory of perception. Top-down processing is an important perceptual theory in cognitive psychology. The theory establishes the paradigm that sensory information processing in human cognition, such as perception, recognition, memory, and comprehension, are organized and shaped by our previous experience, expectation, as well as meaningful context. Top down processing happens when we work from the general to a specific. In top down processing, your abstract impression can influence the sensory data that you gather. In the context of this assessment with regards to the constructive perception under the top down theory of perception, Researchers determined the cognitive perception of certified public accountants regarding the proposed amendment to Accountancy Act of 2004.
For the research design, the current research study carried out by the researchers is a qualitative study that aimed to gather and analyze the respondents' actual perceptions, experiences, ideas, and opinions regarding the modification of the Accountancy Act of 2004. The researchers opted to utilize a descriptive phenomenological design for the nature of the study, which focuses on the gathering descriptions of the respondents' real life experiences. Because the study's objective is to investigate the meaning behind each subject's experiences rather than generalizing to a larger population, this research design is appropriate. A one on one interview was undertaken to acquire more specific information from the respondent. This interview addressed the how and why questions that are essential. Additionally, the information gathered was summarized to consolidate the respondent into a concise summary. The next presenter is Ms. Ryan Isa Mendoza.
The population of this study is CPAs from different fields of accounting, namely public accounting, private accounting, government accounting, and academe. The researchers interviewed three professionals for each field. We used purposive non-probability sampling because of the pre-selected criteria. The participant must be a CPA working in one of the accounting fields mentioned for at least 3 years. The researchers believe that the number of work experience in the criteria is enough for the information collected to be trustworthy and reliable.
To ensure that trustworthiness is contained in this study, all the information gathered during the interview remained confidential and used solely for the research study. With the help of the data that the participants provided, researchers concluded a dependable, confirmable, credible, and a transferable findings of the study. For the dependability of the study, the findings of this study was dependent only up to the extent of the perspective of the respondents with regards to the following research questions provided by the researchers. For the confirmability of the study, the researchers went through consultation via Google Meet and face-to-face with their advisor. Researchers also went through pre-defense and with panelists. Research questionnaires were consulted and approved. Any suggested changes to the contents of this study from research advisor and panelists are followed and observed. Furthermore, interviews were recorded by one of the researchers to avoid any bias in collecting information. For the credibility of the study, the sampling criteria of this study includes that participant must be a CPA and from various accounting fields who have at least 2 working experience. Descriptive phenomenological design was employed and thematic analysis approach was used for analyzing and interpreting qualitative data. The researchers were confident that the sampling criteria, research design, and data analysis approach used are appropriate in this study. Therefore, the results and findings of this study were true and accurate. For the transferability of the study, findings and results of this study that represents the cognitive perception of certified public accountants are not relevant only to the context of a certain proposed amendment, which is applicants must have at least 2 to 3 years of relevant and diverse experience in any field of accountancy as a prerequisite in taking SIPALE, but also to other aforementioned proposed revisions.
In this juncture, the thematic analysis approach was used. Shown in your screen right now is an example of how coding worked in this study. First, recorded interview videos were transcribed and translated and were then familiarized. Researchers also noted the significant and relevant statements from the participants regarding the research questions. Subsequently, initial codes were created that represent the meanings and patterns that were seen in the data, and subsequent to it, initial codes were organized and reviewed for the final codes. Similar meanings and codes that fit together are put into one theme. The researchers look at the broader spectrum of the codes to be able to assign a category or what we call as theme. The following are the themes identified in order for the researchers as a guide to answer the research questions. First one is the stock knowledge of board takers after having at least 2 years of work experience. Second is the effects of having at least 2 years of work experience on the competitiveness of Filipino CPAs compared to global standards. Third is the status of the employment opportunities for Filipino CPAs after having at least 2 years work experience. Next to it is the alignment of CPALE type of questions to at least 2 years of experience. Fifth is the at least 2 years of work experience prior to the examination as a solution on improving the CPALE rating. And last but not the least is the CPA's overall stance on proposed amendment. Proceeding to the next phase are the textual descriptions of experiences and structural descriptions of experiences. And for the smooth flow of presentation, the results of this study and the discussion of findings are also included based on each theme and to be discussed by the researchers. First is the textural description of Team 1, which is the stock knowledge of board takers after having at least 2 years of work experience. Presented in your screen right now are the remarkable quotations of the participants cited by the researchers in relation to the themes created using the thematic analysis approach. Next is the structural description of Team 1. It shows that the at least 2 years work experience affect the stock knowledge of board takers in the following manners. First, the stock knowledge will be diminished because the focus will shift in the work field which only be limited to certain subjects from college, hence theoretical topics irrelevant to that specific work will diminish or be forgotten. Second, the stock knowledge will be enhanced because it has a direct application when working for 2 to 3 years, hence strengthening the stock knowledge of the students. Practical applications of the subjects will enhance the theories learned during the college. It is somewhat different in theory and actuality, but if the foundation of theories is good, it will immensely help during the student's career. The stock knowledge will be both enhanced and diminished because in practice, you will be assigned to a specific field or account, meaning that some stock knowledge related to the work field will be enhanced and at the same time, stock knowledge that is not related to the work field will be reduced. Lastly, the stock knowledge will not be affected because in the first 2 years of the work, like in the OJTs, the tasks that will be assigned to you will be more of secretariat. For the discussion of Team 1, usually the BSA graduates enroll immediately to review centers to prepare themselves for the board examination. According to the research conducted by NASBA and the and the AICPA, results consistently show that the sooner the candidates take the exam after graduating, the more likely they are able to pass. Participant 6 supported this statement saying that the knowledge is the freshest after graduation, so it is better to review for the board exam after graduating. However, in relation to the amendment, it is the opposite. The proposed amendment wanted the examinees to have at least 2 years of work experience before the licensure exam. The researchers' findings in this team said the stock knowledge from the college after the work requirement may enhance and diminish at the same time. It will be enhanced on the specific field of practice. On the other hand, the knowledge unrelated to the practice will be diminished. This is because of the vast coverage of the accounting profession. Moving forward in the next theme, again showing is the textual description of the experience based on theme based on theme 2. which are the effects of the at least 2 years working experience on the competitiveness of the Filipino CPAs compared to global standards. And the next slide shows the structural description of experience of Team 2. Based on the participants' answers, the following are the effects of the at least 2 years of working experience on, on competitiveness of the Filipino CPAs compared to global standards. First, it has no effect. Filipino CPAs, even without the proposed amendment, are already globally competitive. It is because there are Filipino CPAs who are working abroad. Second, it will make the Filipino CPAs more globally competitive, meaning this amendment would enable the CPAs to keep up with the international standard regarding the work requirement. Lastly, Filipino CPAs aren't even locally competitive. Filipino CPAs are in demand not because they are globally competitive, but because of low salary cost. In the discussion of this theme, according to Dr. Noek Quinanola and Attorney Samuel Padilla, PR BOA chairman and member, one of the reasons this amendment is being pushed through is to benchmark with other nations if talking about global competitiveness. When compared with this study, the majority of the participants said that the work requirement will help CPAs become globally competitive. The CPAs will able to keep up with the international standards. This means that the finding of this study in relation to global competitiveness is aligned to the proposed amendment. The discussion of the remaining themes are to be discussed by the researchers.
To further analyze Team 3, which is status of employment opportunities for Filipino CPAs after having at least 2 years of work experience, shown on the screen are some noteworthy quotations made by participants in the various fields under the textual description. Next slide. According to this, the researchers came up with a structural description which stated that having 2 to 3 years of relevant experience and a CPA license, according to five respondents, make it simpler to secure employment. Employers prefer experienced workers since they require less supervision and training. The companies benefit from their experiences as well. Although it is possible to succeed without a license, several businesses favor those who do. On the other hand, four participants claims that after completing the SIPALE, they were hired immediately or within a week. They both concur that a license is sufficient for employment even without prior work experience. The final three individuals believe that job possibilities are always available. For the discussion of Team 3, as cited in Chapter 1, the BOA chairman said that the proposed amendment would open more employment opportunities. Other nations do not recognize the Philippine CPA designations of Filipinos as the current requirements to obtain this designation. In this theme, the finding shows that having at least 2 years of working experience plus CPA license are two great advantages when it comes to employment opportunities. Both bring accounting professionals one step ahead of those who aren't in securing a job. Furthermore, experience and license holder are the priority of hiring companies. Applicants with more work experience in the accounting field are the ones they're looking for. Next is the discussion for theme number 4.
As you can see on the screen, these are the significant remarks of the respondents to the Team 4, which is alignment of Sepali type of questions to at least 2 years of experience. Next, following are the structural descriptions of experiences of Team 4. Based on this theme, researchers' perception that prior to the amendment of the at least 2 years of work experience before taking the Sepali, factors like Sepali type of question should be considered first. The questioner should align with the status of the examinees who had their mandatory at least 2 years work experience, which means that Sepali format of questionnaire is already catering to professionals and not fresh BSA graduates. Hence, practical aspect is the priority of the examination, which focus on the real life scenarios. For the discussion of finding of Team 4, USA, the exam in the USA, the exam is computer-based test designed to measure the knowledge of entry-level CPAs to ensure that they are capable of representing the industry. Each section of the US CPA exam is a rigorous assessment of the minimum technical knowledge and skills required for initial licensure. If the proposed amendment is passed, the CEPALI needs to adjust as well the current exam here in the as well. The current exam here in the Philippines is broad and complicated. Is that it does not cover the basic. One of the respondents even said that there are questions that were not discussed in college. Additionally, most respondents agreed that the exam is more theoretical than practical. Another concern in the work requirement, the proposed amendment does not clearly state that experience required for a graduate to be eligible for examination. In the US, most states or jurisdictions require at least 2 years public accounting experience. The CEPALI questionnaire needs to cater to the additional experience gained while also limiting to the 2-year experience.
Here are the significant answers that the respondents made during the interview. Team 5 wishes the at least 2 years of work experience prior to the examination as a solution to improving the CEPALE rating. Based on this team, at least 2 years of work experience is irrelevant in the passing rate of CEPALE. There are other important problems that need to be addressed first. If not carefully implemented, it will become ineffective and may even worsen the CEPALE rating. As stated in the literature review, educators are particularly concerned since these figures might indicate the quality of accounting education here in the Philippines. To promote the recovery in terms of the number of CPAs produced, major proponents and advocates of accounting education ask for changes to present methods and the incorporation of new and creative learning approaches. From educational institutions to companies, it needs to be aligned with each other for it to be an effective prerequisite.
And for the last theme, overall stance of CPAs in the proposed amendment. This is the textual descriptions of the experiences of the participants. As you can see in the screen, those are some of the significant quotations that the participants have said that highlights this theme. Based on this textual description, the researchers came up with these structural descriptions. There were some participants who agreed with the amendment because most of their answers on the interview guide questions were positive. Some of them said that they disagree with the amendment because of their negative answers, and the others are in a neutral stand because their answers were saying positive and negative opinions at the same time. And lastly, the discussion of findings of this team. The purpose of this amendment is for the betterment of accounting as a whole. It is for those students who are unprepared and unable to perform an excellent level in the workplace. As stated in the literature review, the subjects in the BLECPA have stayed constant since 1975, and it is long past time for them to be updated to reflect current needs. However, for this amendment to meet its objectives, there are a lot of factors needed to be considered. Additional studies must be done on how the work requirement is implemented in other countries with the same amendment. For this amendment to be favored by many, it should address the different concerns rising from the accountancy profession. Conclusions. Based on the findings of the study, the following conclusions were drawn. The stock knowledge will be enhanced and diminished at the same time. The stock knowledge that will be enhanced is the knowledge related to the field that the fresh graduate will be working on. Simultaneously, the other knowledge that is not related to the field will be diminished. Next is the additional at least 2 years of working experience of Filipino CPAs before taking the examinations will make them globally competitive. Next, the researchers conclude that having at least 2 years of working experience in a CPA license will open more employment opportunities to Filipino CPAs. Next, the practical skills that the fresh graduate will gain on having at least 2 years of working experience will not be aligned nor catered by the current CIPALE type of questions. Next is the proposed amendment will not solve the declining passing rate of the CPA licensure examination. And for the last conclusion, half of the CPA participants were opposed to the passing of the proposed amendment to the Accountancy Act of 2004. Lastly, based on the conclusions, we, the researchers, came up with the following recommendations. To the Board of Accountancy, the CIPALE should be amended for it to fit the new criteria of having at least 2 years of diverse work experience. The Board of Accountancy should consider separating the examinations by subject, like taxation, auditing, and etc., depending on the field of work of the test takers. If the BOA really wants the Filipino CPAs to be globally competitive, they should make the CPA license be credited or recognized in other countries. If the BOA wants to improve the CIPALE rating, this proposed amendment is not the solution. A lot of factors need to be considered when talking about the improvement of the rating. First in line is the removal of the subjects which are not applicable or not be used in the practice. Next recommendation is to the future researchers. They may conduct a study using different variables and they can use the findings of the study as their reference. That concludes our presentation. Thank you for listening.